In our last video, we had a look at the simple interest and compound interest formula, and we just had a look at the difference in the simple interest, because interest is always worked out on the original amount. The end value, the number of time periods, number of years that you invest for, is inside the brackets, and in compound interest, it's there outside the bracket as an exponent. Now we're going to look at some of the application of these formulae and how they fit into a real life scenario. The first example here is a look at something called hire purchase, and this is actually very common. They like to try to entice us, these being advertisers and companies and those kind of things. They try and entice us to buy things by making it seem like we're getting a really good deal. So over here, we've got some other smartphone that we could buy on a hire purchase arrangement for only 429 Rand per month, with 24 months to pay and no deposit. Okay, often in a hire purchase agreement there is a deposit, so this might seem like an even better deal to be getting. But let's have a look and see if it really is a good deal. Okay, hire purchase, something worth noting, is that it is always calculated on simple interest. So even if the question doesn't specify, we are actually expected to know that this would be a simple interest question when it comes down to those types of calculations. Okay, the other thing is just to understand what it means. Hire purchase, it's almost like you are renting something until you can pay it off. That's essentially what's happening. So let's say your fridge breaks today, your food is going to go off. You need to go and get a new fridge, but you might not have all the money up front, okay? And so then this looks like a really good deal. Let me pay it off every month. I'll hire it until I've purchased it in full. Okay, it might seem enticing, but you do end up paying so much interest. So it's not necessarily a good financial move. Just to keep that in the back of your mind. But I think these calculations will prove it. Okay, so the first question says here, calculate the total amount to be paid. So in this case, the best thing is not to overcomplicate. We just want to say they have told us here we need to pay 429 Rand a month, and we need to pay it for 24 months. So on our calculators, we're going to pop in there 429 times 24, and that tells us we are paying 10,296 Rand. Okay, now this hasn't specified what type of phone this is. But generally that already would give us some kind of indication as to whether or not we're getting a good deal. But usually this would work out to be quite expensive in the end. Okay, now let's see. Question 2 says, if the installment is calculated with an interest rate of 7.5% per annum, so they're not telling us simple or compound, but we know this is hire purchase, so it's simple interest. Determine the cash price of the phone. Okay, now cash price basically means if I don't pay it off over 24 months, how much would it be if I walked into the shop and didn't need to hire it first? Okay, and so let's write down our simple interest formula. A equals P, 1 plus I times N. Okay, and then I always like to, here at the side, say, well, what am I dealing with? So, the A value at the end of the day is 10,296 Rand. Cash price, that's what the P value would be, the original, how much is it before I take out this loan. The interest rate there is 7.5%, so that's over 100. And N is the number of years. Okay, what we've got here is 24 months. And 24 months, they're 12 months in a year. So we've got 2 years. Okay, so now I can solve. 10,269 equals P times 1 plus 7,5 divided by 100 times 2. Okay, and then to make sure that I don't lose any decimals or anything, I'm going to divide by this whole bracket here and the whole bracket there. Okay, and that's going to leave me just with a P value there. Okay, so on the calculator, 10,269 divided by brackets 1 plus 7,5 over 100 times 2, and we get an answer there in rands of 8,953 and 4 cents. Okay, So to be honest, a phone that usually costs 10,000 or usually costs about 9,000 and you're paying 10,000, this is really not the worst hire purchase I've seen. Usually these interest rates are quite a bit higher. So that's okay. We'll consider this as being a relatively fair hire purchase agreement. Okay, but let's make sure. They say calculate the total interest paid. So interest, be careful, there's a difference between interest and interest rate. Okay, interest is just the extra money that I paid. So if I took this agreement, I would be paying 10,269. But if I could have afforded the phone straight up, I would have paid 8,953 Rand and 4 cents. So whatever's left there is interest. So typing that in on the calculator gives us an answer of 1,315 Rand and 96 cents. That was the interest on this deal. Now here's another question linked to this example, but not quite on the hire purchase page anymore. If the price of this phone increases from, so we worked out that cash price there, 8,953 Rand and 4 cents to 13,500 Rand over 5 years, determine the inflation rate. Okay, so hire purchase comes up often in grade 10. Inflation also comes up often in grade 10. And they don't tell us necessarily that hire purchase is simple interest, and they don't necessarily tell us that inflation is always compound interest. So 2 little bits of information that need to be in your brain, please. So let's work out now the inflation rate. And so that we should now know is going to be the compound interest formula. So 1 plus I to the power of n. Okay, at the side here, we can quickly see what have we got and what do we need. So the original price there, 8,953 and 4 cents, increasing to 13,500 Rand. Inflation rate we don't know, over a period of 5 years. Okay, so we need to try and work out that I value there. Let's substitute in what we've got. 13,500 is equal to 8,953 and 4 cents. 1 plus the unknown I to the power of 5. Okay, now it's just an equation to solve. So let's divide by 8,953 Rand. What I do to the one side, I'm going to do to the other side. So that gives us an answer there of 1,507. Okay, we're not allowed to round off, so I'm writing there dot, dot, dot. If we round off, we really decrease the accuracy of our answer. So we want to keep all the decimal places until the end. Now I'm dealing here with a power of 5. So to get rid of that, I need to do the opposite thing, which is the 5th root. And what I do to the one side, I do to the other side. So without having cleared this on my calculator, I'm just going to take the 5th root. Remember, you can use the answer button on your calculator. So you can type in this 5th root and then say here, answer, the button next to the equals button. And that'll take you to where you need to be. So 1,0, let's go back to this pen, 1,0856 is equal to 1 plus I. Let's take the 1 over, it becomes minus 1. 856 equals I, and then remember what we said, I has been divided by 100. So to get the interest rate, we're going to take this and then multiply it by 100. So on the calculator, we're going to say 0,0 what times by 100, and that gives us 8,56% there as an interest rate. Another thing that comes up in grade 10 maths, so we've got the hire purchase, we've got inflation, is this thing of timelines. So have a look at this person. Rose invests 2,500 Rand. 3 years later, she withdraws 1,500 Rand from that investment. The interest rate for the first 2 years is 10% per annum compounded, and then it changes to 11% per annum for another 5 years, or a further 5 years. How much money will Rose have in the account after 7 years? Okay, so this looks like a whole load of information. And what we need to understand is that this person, Rose, has over time been investing money. So let's draw a timeline just to guide ourselves to understand exactly how this works. Okay, so I'm just drawing a line there. And then what I like to do is I like to say, okay, well, how long did this person invest for? They're saying they're after 7 years. Okay, the day that she invests is going to be 0. Okay, and then at the end, 7. So what you can do is you can then fill in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in between, and that just then helps to guide us. Okay, so at T0, she is going to be investing the 2,500 rand. All right, then 3 years later, so that's going to be T1, T2, T3 years later, she is going to withdraw some of that money, so minus 1,500 rand. Then we've got an interest rate to deal with. So the interest rate is something for the first 2 years and then something else for the remaining 5 years. Okay, so for the first 2 years, we've got an interest rate of 10% per annum. And then for the remaining years, we've got an interest rate of 11% per annum. So at least things are looking good here for this investment of roses. Okay, and now we just need to figure out how on earth are we going to calculate this. Okay, this is compound interest. So we're going to use the compound interest formula, but we need to figure out what we will fill in where. Okay, and again, we don't want to have rounded off answers anywhere along the way. So what you can do is you can work it out, what's going to happen for the first 2 years. Then something is changing here again. So I love to just pick up highlighters and kind of divide and say, well, there I've already divided because of the interest rate, but there's another division there where the money gets withdrawn. So when I calculate this, I'm actually going to calculate it in 3 steps. Okay, and I like to put them all into one calculation. Most of your teachers will feel the same. But you can, as long as you promise not to round off, you can actually work this one out and then use this answer here as the new p-value in the second step, and then use that answer as the new p-value in the third step. Okay, but let's do it together, and I think you'll see that it's quite manageable. All right, so for this first part, we are going to say here A equals, okay, let's do the first part in red. So she's going to invest her 2,500 rand. 1 plus the interest rate there is 10 over 100, okay, to the power of 2 years. Okay, so that's what's happening here, the first little part of Rose's investment. Now she's got another year, but the interest rate is going to change. So because it's compound interest, she's going to earn interest on everything in the bank account up until now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, all of this becomes the new p-value there. Okay, and then this is going to multiply by 1 plus the interest rate has now changed to 11%. Okay, just for 1 year, because now Rose she's withdrawing money, and so we need to take that into account. Okay, so after that time, she's going to subtract 1,500 rand from the account. So we've done this part here, we've done that part, and now we've subtracted. So now to figure out how much money is left in her bank, it's whatever the answer is to this part of my question. Okay, and the minute I start adding pluses or minuses, I need to be careful because I've made it more than one term. So I want this to be one whole term, so I'm going to just put some brackets there to show myself that that whole thing is the new p-value for this final step of the equation. Okay, and let's work it out. 1 plus, she's got 11% here. For how many years? 1, 2, 3, 4 more years. Okay, and we can check that. We can say 2 plus 1 plus 4 does give me a total of 7 years. And so now I can just work out the answer to this question as long as I am on point with my calculator skills. So grab your calculator and type this in with me, and let's see if we get to the same answer. Okay, be careful as you type. If your calculator is anything like mine, as you start getting to this part of the calculation, you really got to double check that it's listening to you. It's typing everything that you're pressing. I feel like the calculators get a bit tired. Okay, but what happened is I've typed it in, and I get a final answer here of 2,820 rand and 20 cents. Remember, with financial maths, we need to give our answers in rands and cents. So it's always going to be 2 decimal places Whether the question specifies that or not, we will just be expected to know it. Okay, so if we think about it, and this is what I'd love to see more of my students doing, is just checking the answer and saying, does this make sense? Okay, she invested 2,500 Rand for 7 years. Why does she only have 300 Rand more? Well, it seems okay because she did withdraw here this 1,500 Rand. So that means that the amount that was in the account for the last little bit was not necessarily the most amount of money. And so yes, this does seem like a logical answer. Okay, so if ever you get a question that's got a whole load of things, interest rate changes, adding and subtracting money, my advice is draw a timeline and then take a highlighter and divide section by section. And then remember that as you go, whatever you worked out in the preceding step is technically the p-value for the step that you are doing next.